Getting a lot of attention for being successful is a bad position to be in. Australians call it the tall poppy syndrome because the tallest poppy in a field are the ones that are most likely to have their heads whacked off. That's interesting. Not many people know about Australian tall poppy syndrome. But we're here now, so hope you are all well. Hope you are ready for a great day. And to start the day, we're going to be reading Principles, Ray Dalio, really great book. Oops. And unfortunately, that's going to be mirror image on the big O. We're going to start reading Going from Below the Radar to Above It. I'm looking forward to a reading and giving you my commentary. I'm looking forward to creating the day that I want and to creating some really amazing things. So let's get motivated, and then let's all get out there and create some real amazing things to create the life that we want. Okay, going from below the radar to above it. Success is a double-edged sword. As I learned after we anticipated the financial crisis and Bridgewater and I began to receive unwanted public attention, our unusual performance, our unusual way of looking at economics and markets, and our unusual culture made us a continuing subject of interest. I wanted to stay under the radar, so I avoided interacting with the press. That didn't stop the press from writing about me and Bridgewater, which they typically did in a sensationalistic way, either painting me as a superhero investor who walked on water or as a leader of a cult, and sometimes both. It's funny. Getting a lot of attention for being successful is a bad position to be in. Australians call it the tall poppy syndrome because the tallest poppy in a field are the ones that are most likely to have their heads whacked off. That's interesting. Not many people know about Australian tall poppy syndrome. So it's interesting that Ray Dalio knows about that one. I didn't like the attention, and I especially didn't like the mischaracterizations of Bridgewater as a cult, because it felt it was hurting our ability to recruit great people. At the same time, I realized that because we didn't let the media see how we truly operated inside Bridgewater, those sensational portrayals were unavoidable. So I decided in late 2010 to make public my principles, which explained exactly what we were doing and why. I put it on our website so it could be read freely and understood by people outside the company. Doing that was a hard decision, but it turned out to be a great one. Most people got it, and many beyond Bridgewater benefit from reading them. More than 3 million people have downloaded Principles. Some even had it translated into their own languages at their own expense. I've received a large number of thank you notes from people who said that reading Principles had changed their lives. Preparing Bridgewater to succeed without me. Since I was a kid, I've learned by doing. I just dive in after things I wanted and trying to survive long enough to learn from my mistakes and improve. If I changed fast enough to become sustainable at whatever I was doing, then I would build onto that to flourish. I've always had great faith in my ability to figure things out. And over time, my need to figure things out made me better at doing so. As a result, I tended to hire people who were the same way, who would dive right into challenges, figure out what to do about them, and then do it. I figured if they had great character, common sense, and creativity, and were driven to achieve our shared mission, they would discover what it took to be successful if I gave them the freedom to figure out how to make the right decisions. I knew that micromanaging and handcuffing them wouldn't work because neither of us would like it. If I was the one telling them what to do, I wouldn't be getting any leverage from them. Besides, I didn't want to work with people who needed that. But starting in the 1990s, I began to recognize the emotional barriers most people had to looking at their problems and weaknesses forthrightly. Rather than embracing ambiguous situations and difficult challenges, they tended to get uncomfortable when facing them. It is the rare bird who has the right mix of common sense, creativity, and character to shape change. Almost everyone needs help before they can get there. So I wrote down my principles and the logic behind them and shared them, hoping they could be used by those who thought they were good and debated openly by those who didn't. I figured that over time, we would all get in sync about how particular situations should be handled. But while almost all of us quickly agreed on the principles intellectually, many still struggled to convert what they had agreed to intellectually into effective action. This was because their habits and emotional barriers remained stronger than their reasoning. The training and the virtual reality tapes helped a lot, but they still weren't enough. No matter how much effort we put into screening new hires and training them to work in our idea meritocracy, it was inevitable that many of them would fall short. My approach was to hire, train, test, and then fire or promote quickly so that we could rapidly identify the excellent hires and get rid of the ordinary ones, repeating the process again and again until the percentage of those who were truly great was high enough to meet our needs. But for this to work, we needed people with high standards who wouldn't hesitate to eliminate people who couldn't cut it. Many new employees, and some older ones, still were reluctant to probe hard at what people were like, which made things worse. It's tough to be tough on people. Of course, most of the people who come to Bridgewater are adventurous types. They know what they're getting into. They understand that the chances their job will not work out are higher than normal, but they embrace the risk because the upside of succeeding is huge relative to the downside of having it not work out. In the worst case, they learn a lot about themselves, have an interesting experience, and leave for other jobs. In the best case, they become a part of an exceptional team, achieving exceptional things. New hires typically go through an acclimation period of about 18 to 24 months before becoming comfortable with the truthfulness and transparency that is such an essential part of the Bridgewater culture, especially accepting one's mistakes and figuring out how to deal with them. But some people never adapt to it. I've been told that joining Bridgewater is a bit like joining an intellectual Navy SEALs. Others describe it as going to a school of self-discovery run by someone like the Dalai Lama. The people who thrive say that while the period of adjustment is difficult, it is also joyous because of the excellence they achieve and the extraordinary relationships they make. And the ones who can't or won't adapt must be cut. This is essential to keeping Bridgewater excellent. So this is really important and really interesting. Everybody needs to figure out what their own business is and what it stands for. And when you can do that, that's when you start to be able to create and formulate the ideas of how do you find the right people that fit that. And this is a great analogy of what Bridgewater did. Different companies do it differently. So if every company did this, then it wouldn't work for them because this is the Bridgewater culture. And the IBM culture is different, and their hiring is going to be completely different. And a different company's hiring is going to be different because it needs to be based on that culture. But what I think that you will notice is that Bridgewater has done an absolutely amazing job of choosing their method. And I'm a very big fan of Navy SEALs. So when it comes to wanting to be the best, Navy SEALs are a great analogy to have. So it's a great compliment probably for Ray Dalio to be told that getting into Bridgewater is a little bit like a Navy SEAL training. For a long time, I had been the one responsible for establishing the culture and upholding its high standards. But in 2010, I was 60 years old and had been running Bridgewater for 35 years. Though I expected to be good for another 10 years or so, I was ready to put my energy into other things. While I always wanted to be deep into the markets, I wanted to spend more time with my family and friends to help policymakers and to pursue a few growing passions like ocean exploration and philanthropy, as well as whatever else interested me. My plan was to step out as CEO while helping my replacements as a mentor, remain in my investment role, and take the time I gained from no longer managing the company to suck the marrow out of life while I still could. As with all organizations, whether Bridgewater would succeed would come down to the people and the culture. People who run companies are faced with important choices every day. How they make those choices determines the character of the company, the quality of its relationships, and the outcomes it produces. When the buck stopped with me, I was responsible for most of the important decisions. Now those decisions would be in the hands of others. While they would have a well-established culture and agreed upon principles that had worked for decades, the proof would be in the pudding. And we are up to chapter 6. Let's see, how much Okay, we'll read a little bit more. Returning the Boon, Chapter 6, 2011 to 2015. It seems to me that life consists of three phases. In the first, we are dependent on others and we learn. Very, very true. In the second, others depend on us and we work. And in the third and last, when others no longer depend on us and we no longer have to work, we are free to save a life. Not everybody gets to that point, though, and that's something that's very important to realize as well. So there are two schools of thought. One is work in a way that you are going to continue producing and you just have to work. And others who will say, well, I might not survive till the very end, so I want to make sure that I produce, but I produce it in a way that I don't have to do as much work anymore. I was beginning to transition my life, transition from my second to my third phase, both intellectually and emotionally. I was no longer as excited about being successful as I was excited about having the people I cared about be successful without me. I had 2 jobs at Bridgewater to transition out of, overseeing the management of the company as Chief Executive Officer and overseeing the management of our investments as a Chief Investment Officer. I wasn't going to stop playing the markets because that's a game I've loved playing since I was 12, and I will keep playing until I die. But I didn't want to be needed in either role because of the key man risk that would create for the company. My partners and I understood that transitioning from the first generation of leadership to the next in a founder-led organization with a unique culture is difficult, especially if the leader has been in place for a long time. Bill Gates' transition out of the CEO role at Microsoft in 2008 was the most recent example of that, but there have been many others. The biggest question I wrestled with was whether I should leave management completely or stay involved as a mentor. On the one hand, I like the idea of stepping out completely because it would give the new leadership freedom to find their own ways of succeeding without me looking over their shoulder. My friends urged me to do that, to declare victory, collect my chips, and move on. But I wasn't confident that the transition would go well, as I hadn't done such a thing before. I do things through trial and error, making mistakes, figuring out what I did wrong, coming up with new principles, and finally succeeding. And I didn't see why my transition should be any different. I also didn't believe that it would be fair for me to dump the heavy workload I was carrying on those I was passing my CEO responsibilities to. I knew that Lee Kuan Yew, the wise founder and leader of Singapore for 41 years, had transitioned out of his leadership responsibilities to be a mentor. And I had seen how well that went. For all those reasons, I decided I would stay on as a mentor. That meant I would either not speak at all or speak last, but always be available to provide advice. My partners liked the idea. We agreed we should begin as soon as possible, so those replacing me could gain experience and we could make adjustments as needed. Since what we didn't know about transitioning was greater than what we did know about it, we knew we would need to be careful. We expected that transitioning well would take a number of years, perhaps 2 or 3, perhaps as many as 10. Since we had worked together for many years, we were optimistic that it would be on the shorter end of that range. On the first day of 2011, I announced to the company that I would be stepping down as CEO with Greg Jensen and David McCormack replacing me. On July 1, I handed over my management responsibilities to Greg, David, and the rest of the management committee. Simultaneously, we explained our up to 10-year transition plan to our clients. And that brings us to the next section. And this is a really great example of looking for what other people have done well. So, for example, the leader of Singapore and how he's transitioned out. And Ray Dalio is very good at having a look at what have other people done and what have they succeeded with, so that I am able to do something similar. And I think that this was a perfect way for him to be able to take a step back without jeopardizing the company or giving everybody the full responsibility of keeping his baby alive, which is probably going to be more difficult given the type of culture and everything else that it had. So another really great chapter, and I hope you enjoyed that as well. If you missed some of this, if you just started watching and you'd like to watch the rest of the book and my commentary, you can do that on YouTube. The Passive Cash Flow Club is the YouTube channel where we publish all of these videos. We also did Rich Dad Poor Dad and The Art of Thinking Clearly, 2 other really amazing books that I have read and given my commentary on. If you would like to also get in touch and know about, and I know that we haven't spoken about it in this chapter, but if you want to be able to implement these kinds of things, if you want to become more successful, if you want to be an investor, if you want to understand the markets and understand how to invest in real estate, stocks, or business, or whatever else, there's lots of other different options. There's 1,000,001 different kinds of investments. But if you want to learn and start and get better, if you're already doing it, then you can do that by sending me a message on Instagram, and you can join us for a game of cash flow. We have an online version which takes it even beyond what the board game does, because it has more realistic scenarios and it will teach you more things. And we have a 10-week course around it. There's lots of amazing things that we are doing. So if you'd like to know more about that, reach out and send me a message on Instagram. You can find me at business_team_6_official. And we would love to see you. And also on the YouTube channel, we answer your questions as well. So feel free to send your questions around finance, around wealth creation, around all of these different things. And yes, let us know what your questions are. We'll create videos around those and put them up on the YouTube. And then make sure that you subscribe so that you know when the new videos are going up, because it might be a question that somebody else asked, but that is relevant to you. So you never know your luck in a big city. So make sure you hit the subscribe button and you will know when those videos are up. And it might be the answer to a question that you have been struggling with. Okay, I am going to get into my day. I am feeling motivated. I'm feeling excited. I hope you are too. I still have a bit of a frog in my throat and a couple of other things going on, but I'm still excited about this amazing new day. And I am looking forward to, yes, creating and doing things that are going to be beneficial for the whole world. I want to impact as many people's lives as possible. So that's what I'm going to go out and do today. I'm looking forward to seeing you all tomorrow for another reading. And I appreciate you being here today. And yes, finally, remember to make the switch to unlock your rich. If you keep doing everything in exactly the same way, there will be no changes whatsoever. So make sure that you learn to make some switches and you will unlock your riches.